I was inspired to take a look again to the story of Samson after some things that Mike said in Sunday's sermon. And so I took a look at it again. I learned some new things, and so I'm going to try to share those with you tonight. Samson was born a Nazarite, meaning he was separated or set aside for God. This meant that he was not to drink wine or eat fruit of the vine. He couldn't go near or touch a dead body, human or animal, or he couldn't cut his hair. Though he was set apart for special service to God, Judges 13:5, Samson ignored his Nazarite vow of godly devotion and relied upon his own strength and abilities rather than upon God's. The majority of the story of Samson centers around the valley of Sorek. Here, he met a Philistine woman of Timnah on the west end of the valley and married her. Then he proposed a riddle. The riddle was found out because of a threat from the woman's own people to burn her out unless she told them. The Valley of Sorek was a bordering territory of Israel and the Philistines, a central place where the Philistines and Samson seem to have had constant skirmishes and banter between themselves. Sorek, meaning red grapes, an area known for its wine, Samson seems to have had no qualms about touching dead bodies of the lion and the jawbone of a donkey. Samson, after having his hair shaved off, still thought that he could go out as at other times and shake himself free, not knowing the Lord had departed from him, the true source of his strength. However, when meditating about Samson, we might consider we do not know how much of Samson's decisions might have been of the Lord, as God was seeking an occasion against the Philistines, as they ruled over Israel, and God was about to judge them. Judges 14:4. However, despite all of Samson's weaknesses, he did turn back to God before he died. Judges 16:28-30. Samson's death did much to impede the oppressive actions of the Philistines. Samson's destruction of the temple of Dagon was a major factor in their downfall at Mizpah by Samuel and the children of Israel some 100 years later in 1 Samuel 7:7-14. Perhaps the idea that he could still be useful to God even when the others might see him as disobedient, defeated, disgraced, and useless, and not in any position to do anything for God, is where God saw Samson as a man of faith. This is evidenced by the fact that he is listed among the faithful in the Hebrews Hall of Faith. Also, when we read through this list of names recorded there, we find that no one in the Hall of Faith was perfect. All had flaws. Although God empowered him with supernatural strength to begin the deliverance of the people of Israel from the Philistines, Judges 13:5, it was his weakness for Philistine women that did him in. This extraordinary story tells us that Samson was spiritually blind long before his eyes were gouged out. In those days, there was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right in their own eyes. When seeking a wife of Timnah, he told his father to get her for him because she was right in my eyes. His passion for women reminds us of Proverbs we have been studying, like what we read today, Proverbs 11:22. As a ring of gold in a pig's snout, so is a beautiful woman who lacks discretion. Being sold out by your lover probably falls under lack of discretion. Proverbs 18:24, a man of many companions comes to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother, reminding us of Samson's 30 Philistine companions that cared more for a change of clothing than for true friendship. Proverbs 13:20, he who walks with the wise men will be wise, but the companion of a fool will suffer harm. Proverbs 5:3, for the lips of an adulteress drip honey, and smoother than oil is her speech, reminds us that the search for a companion in the harlot of Gaza did not end well. When he was found out, he had to wait till midnight and go and pull up the posts of the city gates to escape, and carried the whole gates to the top of a mountain. Samson was a powerful man with supernatural strength. The story reveals that he was also very intelligent, with an unusual sense of humor, and loved a riddle. Samson first got in trouble when he suggested a riddle that no one but him could solve, with a solution that highlighted his unbeatable strength. He continued to behave arrogantly and take foolish risks throughout his life. However, the scriptures say that the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him right before the lion attacked him. The Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him right before he killed 30 Philistines to get their clothes. And before he slaughtered 1,000 men, the Spirit of the Lord had rushed upon him right before that. God working through Solomon's sin in order to accomplish his people's victory. In the years following Samson's life, he was considered somewhat of a folk hero by his people, the Israelites. And in fact, the Greeks based their own Hercules on him. It is not hard to see that just over 100 years later, David would have been inspired by such a man and how God, through him, could do so much for his people. I discovered some amazing parallels in the life of Samson and the life of David. The Spirit came on David as it did on Samson, 1 Samuel 16:13. Both were empowered to kill a lion whilst keeping the facts secret. In both these acts, they were taught that they would deliver God's people from the Philistines. Judges 14:4 and 1 Samuel 17:34, 37. David had the additional bear as evidence too. Both had a wife given to a companion while away. Indeed, David's confident words that God would deliver him from the Philistine were evidently inspired by Samson, the renowned one-man deliverer from the Philistine armies. Both Samson and David brought grace salvation for Israel, 1 Samuel 19:5 and Judges 15:18. As Samson was characterized by his love of the riddle, David used the same word to describe how he chose to put forth a riddle, Psalm 78, verse 2. David's Psalm 3 is full of references to Samson's fight in Lehi. I will not fear tens of thousands drawn up against me. Huge armies against one solitary man is a clear reference to Samuel at Lehi, or Samson at Lehi. For you have smitten all my enemies on the cheek or jawbone, Psalms 3:7. It could imply with the jawbone. The Hebrew word for jawbone is the same as in Judges 15:16. But you, Lord, are a shield about me, Psalms 3:3a, David wrote. How it must have seemed to a spectator, imagining Samson fighting the 1,000 with the jawbone of a donkey. Mike talks about having a video of an event of the past that would want to see what that was like. If you were a spectator, what would that look like? Consider why Samson's enemies may not have trusted having weapons. He has another remark about shaking away as before. And it's almost like Samson's enemies came at him without weapons because they previously learned that any weapons they brought were immediately disarmed from them and were used against them. Imagine the fear of anybody bringing a weapon to Samson. They probably had a wrestling match with Samson to subdue him, thinking they could do it with enough men, and they never could. When Samson was faced with the 1,000 men, he had to improvise and use the jawbone because he was overrun. And so just looking at that, you would think that there was a shield around him as he beat off these 1,000 men trying to get on him. I cry aloud with my voice to the Lord, David says. I make my supplication with my voice to the Lord, Psalms 142:1, like Samson did when he called to the Lord from between the columns of the Philistine temple of Dagon. What can we learn from these accounts from Judges? I think I learned there's a lot more to the story when we look at the details we might miss in a quick reading. All sin, especially sexual sin, comes with its own dire and sometimes deadly consequences. This is a truly relevant in today's society that completely embraces doing what is right in your own eyes. We can learn not to have arrogance and haughtiness with regard to our talents and abilities that may be taken away from us at any time. We can learn that we have a God that cares for us and will deliver us if we seek him his way. We can also see that just like David was influenced by Samson, that we can be influenced by them both. If we can help you with anything, please come forward as we stand and sing.